the arrival of Dee Devlin this morning was something else. I mean, yeah, a woman is going to support her man, and seeing her getting out of the Rolls Royce, the chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce they arrived in, and holding hands with him on the way in, looking very groomed and put together. He obviously has denied these allegations of rape that a jury have now agreed. They have agreed with Nikita Hand's version of events and awarded her costs in this case. But in his own admission, Conor McGregor went out this particular night, ended up in Crystal nightclub with a group of women, shared cocaine with them, and then they went home unexpectedly. So he picked up his phone and went on Instagram and found another woman who had been messaging him, a randomer really, Nikita Hand, and went over and collected her and her friend from their Christmas party, which had been going on all night. And they all together went to a hotel where he told the jury he had rough sex with her twice without a condom.
Yeah.
That's what he admits doing. The jury obviously believe Nikita Hand's version of events, which is that she was raped. But that's quite an extraordinary thing to support your partner through, is it not?
Yeah, pretty extraordinary. I mean, today was the first time she was at the trial, and sort of, up to a point, I suppose she may have been keeping her head buried in the sand a little bit about what was really going on. And this morning, I had a very different view to them arriving in court. So I was in the courtroom, and first of all, in arrives his sister Aoife.
Now, is Aoife the sister that was recently married?
No, that's Erin. So
okay.
Erin wasn't there. So it was Aoife, his mother, Margaret, father, Tony, who was been by his side for the entire trial. Erin was not there, but her husband, Terry, was there.
Yes.
Erin's daughter was also there, and there was numerous other people who were with him as part of his entourage, as well as Philip Sutcliffe, and he was there. He's an independent counsellor over in Crumlin. He's running for the Dáil. He is an ex-boxer, boxing coach, and he came in with McGregor into court today.
And just as we're talking, Clodagh, I see Conor McGregor on his official Twitter site, and presumably all his other social media, has released a statement. He says, "I will be appealing today's decision. The judge's instruction and the modest award given was for assault, not for aggravated or exemplary damages. I am disappointed that the jury did not hear all the evidence that the DPP reviewed. I'm with my family now, focused on my future. Thank you to all my support worldwide." That's already had 74,000 views, and it dropped, what time are we? It dropped 5 minutes ago. And there's 213 responses, which we're not going to go through. No doubt that's going to fly around social media. What does that mean? That he's going to appeal. Mm-hmm. The judge's instruction and the modest award given was for assault. So that is true.
Yes.
It was for assault, but the evidence heard in the courtroom, the evidence given by Nikita Hand was that she was raped.
Yeah.
So obviously that award, the judge's instructions and that award given was for assault is accurate. We did discuss that because it was James Lawrence that they were asked to consider had he sexually assaulted her, but in the case of Conor McGregor, it was had he assaulted her.
Yeah. It was a bit more, I mean, James Lawrence seems to have kind of muddied the waters of this case. That he was found not liable, so that the jury found that he did not assault Nikita Hand in December of 2018.
And it was weird because he had said he had sex with her twice after Conor McGregor went home and left this hotel room. She said she didn't believe she'd sex with him at all. And yet the case taken was that he had raped her.
Yeah.
So it was very confusing. And of course, this is a civil case. I mean, none of this would ever happen in criminal proceedings. This whole case started off as a criminal investigation. And Nikita Hand had ended up going to the Rotunda Sexual Assault Unit where she'd been examined. She'd given a statement to police about what happened. Conor McGregor was arrested. The incident happened in December of 2018. He was arrested and questioned in January of 2019. The court heard that during the course of that arrest, he answered no comment 150 times while under arrest. And the day after he had been arrested. James Lawrence walked in of his own volition to say that he had had sex with Nikita Hand.
Yeah, so the night prior to James Lawrence giving his statement to Gardaí, Conor McGregor said, are you sure she didn't have sex with somebody else? And then an hour later in another interview said, I think she might have had sex with James Lawrence. And it's the next day he comes in and he tells Gardaí that he had consensual sex with Nikita Hand twice that evening after Conor McGregor had left. He also... he had consensual sex with Danielle Keeley, who was also... she gave evidence on his part and as part of Conor McGregor's case. And what happened there was she got on the stand and said it was once. He got on the stand and said it was 3 times. Obviously, then the jury found in his favour in terms of they found that he was not liable for any damages.
So look, it is slightly confusing. There's no doubt about it. And the case has been not straightforward from the beginning. The trial has been, like, we have had to report it. You've had to literally accurately read from your notes about what happened in the courtroom because there's a jury there. And we could not be seen to be going outside what evidence was heard in front of that jury. That's all we could report on. So, and it was at times very confusing. Everybody was saying different things about one night. There was obviously a lot of drink involved. There was drugs involved. Everybody was coming from a night out into what was the second day of a night out in a hotel room. And the evidence was just not black and white, was it? The whole way through.
No.
So the jury went out on this case. We're on Friday evening now. The jury went out.
The jury went out on Thursday evening. So at just after 3:00 yesterday. So they had about an hour of deliberations before they left for the day. They started at 10:00 this morning, broke for lunch for a half an hour today. And when they returned from lunch, they asked the judge if they could continue deliberations up till 6 p.m. today. The usual time the court would finish at throughout the trial has been around 4:30. And then at around 4:50, they came back in to give their and they gave their verdict. It was just after 4:30 when we heard that the jury were coming back to the room.
So tell us about today. And, you know, we started off by talking about Dee Devlin's arrival, his mother's arrival. What's it, Margaret, is it?
Margaret. Yes.
And his sister Aoife, and where did they all sit and what did they do for the day? Because it was a long day waiting.
Yes, so they came in to the courtroom first. They were at the back of the courtroom. Now, it is a small enough courtroom. They were standing at the back. They were waiting, and then Conor came in with Dee. So I was surprised that she was with him when he came in, and they sat together. Obviously, the jury come in. They're sent out to, dismissed to continue their deliberations. At that point then, they were kind of sitting around the back of the courtroom for a while. The jury had sent a note up to the judge asking for a HDMI cable and a monitor because they wanted to watch the CCTV. I think they only had a laptop and a USB stick to watch it on, so they wanted to watch it on a monitor. And the judge told them that they would ask, said, I'll get the clerk to see what they can do. If not, we may have to clear the courtroom.
Bring them back in to watch it, yeah.
That would mean kicking everyone in the courtroom out, turning off all the recording devices, everything like that, and having them watch the CCTV. And obviously, if they're having discussions about their deliberations or whatever, the recording equipment which is on normally in a court would have to be turned off. So eventually, about half an hour later, 20 minutes later, the clerk, somebody comes up and clears the top of the court. There's like a top box where the public have been sitting, and we were like, oh, okay, this is it, we're going to be cleared out now, and nobody cleared us out. The McGregors eventually left. I seen then, about 10 minutes later, it wasn't that long, there was footage of them entering the Hampton Hotel, which is just across from the back of the forecourts, and they were in there. I would assume that's where they have been all day. They didn't really spend much time around. Then it came up to about almost 1:00 when the jury minder came in and said that they wanted to break for lunch. They wanted to take a half an hour. At that point, the McGregors were back in the room. Nikita Hand and her support team were not there, and dismissed for lunch. We came back after lunch, of course, told they want to stay on till 6:00. And then around you know, like I said, around 4:30ish, I'd say, you know, we were told the jury were coming back in. We were kind of like, is it a verdict or is it a question that they were going to ask? Because of course the jury have the opportunity to come back in and ask the judge to explain a piece of law or a piece of evidence to them again. And then when we seen Nikita Hand was coming back into the room as well, we knew that was the verdict. McGregor.
And how did she look?
She was shaking. She was physically shaking. She was trying to sip from a bottle of water and her hands were just shaking so much. She was with her boyfriend, her now boyfriend, who we now know is called Gary. And as well, I believe a woman from the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre who was also there as support with her throughout the trial. She was very, very shaken, very nervous, which, you know, you would expect to see. But what I was surprised to see was how shook up McGregor was. I mean, this is a man who has a fierce reputation. We heard the details of what he did to Nikita Hand in that hotel room. And, you know, to see him cowering, breathing heavily, sighing, kind of.
And who was with them?
So he had his mother on one side holding one arm and kind of rubbing it, and the same with Dee Devlin on the other side holding
an arm and rubbing it.
I seen when the verdict came through, you know, there was a lot of head shaking, and I seen his niece was there and she burst into tears. And actually, before the jury even came back into the room to deliver the verdict, the judge said he had two things to say. The first one was there was so many people standing at the back, he asked them to leave and go up to the public gallery or leave the courtroom. And he said, and the second thing is, he was like, I don't want there to be any panic when this verdict comes true. If anyone is out of order, they will go to jail.
Right.
So we give a very strong warning to the people that were
didn't
there.
want shouting and
Exactly. Or any sort of reaction like that. Of course, then we got the verdict.
So what verdict came first? So there was 4 or 5 questions.
They had 2 questions.
2 questions.
The first question was, do you agree that Conor McGregor assaulted Nikita Hand in Dublin on this date? Yes or no? And they said yes. And then the same question was posed but for James Lawrence, and they said no.
So this, when they're coming back in, so McGregor was first to know his fate.
Yes.
And was there a reaction from them, or did he look stunned, or?
It was sort of an intake of breath. I think they kind of held pretty, I mean, they were visibly very shook. I don't think it progressed any more beyond that once they got the verdict. It was just shocking to see his reaction. I suppose,
him looking vulnerable, maybe, is it?
Vulnerable, exactly. That's how I describe it, because he hasn't seemed that way at all throughout the trial.
And what about Lawrence? Was he alone?
He had a few people with him. He only had 1 or 2 people with him, the same faces that have been with him throughout the trial. He was in the courtroom kind of this morning. He wasn't in the hotel with the McGregors or wherever the McGregors were. He was in and out of the courtroom this morning, kind of awaiting to see what was happening. And then he was back this evening for the verdict.
Mm-hmm. So how did he take it?
I actually didn't see.
Yeah.
I didn't see. It was too busy looking at Conor McGregor. And I'm also not even sure, I'm not 100% sure he was in the room for the verdict.
Okay.
I really amn't. It seems like when, I finally put my attention back to the rest of the room, he just seemed to kind of be walking in. So,
and sort of more importantly, maybe, how did Nikita Hand cope when?
Just shaking and crying. I mean, she came out afterwards once McGregor and his crew left. Himself and Dee walked out the front door and got into a car. The media swarmed them. I
saw the footage of that.
Yeah, we have some footage of that. And the media swarmed them, but they got off in the car eventually. And then we knew Nikita Hand was also going to give a statement. We'd been told during the day that she was going to give one. And she, of course, very bravely came out up in front of all the media, the microphones in her face, flashing lights, cameras, boom, mics, everything, and came up and was very poised. I think she, although visibly shaking, she could really see that. I think she spoke very well.
Let's watch a bit of that.
Just come up a little bit closer, please. A little bit closer.
Yeah, I know. I would like to start off by saying I'm overwhelmed and touched by the support I have received from everybody. First, I want to thank the Clodagh legal team and my 3 barristers, John Gordon, Ray Boland and Sean. They have been amazing from start to finish. I want to thank Mr. Justice Alexander Owens, the jury, all the witnesses. I want to thank the doctors, nurses and everyone at the sexual assault treatment unit and the Rotunda Hospital for looking after me, especially my own Dr. Frank Clark.
Okay, so she thanks in particular her partner, and she thanks the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, and she thanks all the support she got from people, from the public, who have obviously been writing to her and reaching out to her through various means. This is obviously a huge... She never mentions the money, obviously, and of course the statement would have been pre-prepared because she was awarded, what, 250,000?
Yeah, she was awarded 250,000, and I was also I had asked one of her solicitors before we left, is she definitely given a statement just to make sure, and he said yes, and she prepared it herself.
Okay,
so he said it wasn't something he had written for her.
So she's awarded this 250. McGregor, I mean, look, it's pocket change, isn't it? I mean, to a guy like him. But anyway,
I think he's the world's richest sports star.
Like, exactly. And I mean, anyway, that's what that is. He wasn't fined as such, these aggravated or exemplary damages, which they were able to do if they wanted. Wasn't that right?
Yeah, so it was kind of explained to the jury that it was their way of showing contempt or disgust at the defendant's behaviour on the stand. I mean, we had that. There was his time on the stand. The first thing that happened was he had used the phrase "lovely ladies" to describe Nikita and Danielle, and this was mentioned in Remy Farrell's closing statement that he said that he'd heard an intake of breath from the jury when he said that. And again, in his closing statement, he went on to say, you're not here to, even if you hate them, if you loathe them, you have to find, fairly. And he also had this incident on the stand where he was talking about when he got the photograph from Nikita. So Nikita tagged him in a photograph on her Instagram stories, or sent him in a photograph or something like that. And he made a sort of lewd gesture with his hands about that. Again, something else Remy Farrell brought up in his closing statement. And then, of course, we also heard him on the stand when he was discussing his mobile phone and how he didn't want to give the Mr. Gordon for Nikita Hand had said, you didn't want to give up your phone, and he said, you can have it here now, pal. But he also got upset and said something like, I want all the evidence in here. I want the statement about her sucking dick in the back of the taxi. Something along those lines.
That never came up again, sure it didn't.
No, never came up again.
No. I'm just looking at his statement. I mean, he's obviously quite used to this. Has now hit 340,000 views just on X alone. So I think his Instagram site is probably bigger. He's bigger on Instagram than X. He has a reach, doesn't he?
Yes.
He's able to get this little bit of narrative, which is really only saying that he's going to be appealing. I don't think anybody's going to be too... He's disappointed the jury did not hear all the evidence that the DPP reviewed. The DPP, the Director of Public Prosecution, that is, because, of course, the DPP considered any charges that should be taken against him for a criminal case and decided against it, and was in communication with Nikita Hand regarding that decision. So it is, I think, what everybody's saying is that, this was a case that presumably could have been settled. Now, that would be on the basis that Nikita Hand would have accepted a settlement and they could have come to an arrangement. I think most cases can be settled when there comes to civil proceedings, unless somebody's absolutely out and out. I mean, there's no doubt, but that was hard going on Nikita Hand. The detail that came out, it's seedy detail. That, she was out at a Christmas party and all that happened was seedy. There was a seediness to it that I think everybody was talking about during the trial. But McGregor has come out of it without... What was his reputation before he went in? His reputation was, he was a kind of he is a bit lewd. He's a little bit rough-mannered. He is a famous sports star and he has this huge following of young men who think he's wonderful. He certainly, in his videos and that, doesn't come across as being very respectful towards women. And there was always rumours about him and all the rest of it. But he's come out of this court case. Even what he's admitted is going to overshadow him for the rest of his days. It is... there's nothing nice about it.
No. I mean, and even if you look back at where he was in his life at that time, his fiancée, then girlfriend, was about to give birth. She was 8 months pregnant in December. She gave birth at the beginning of January, and a couple of weeks later, he is going into the Garda station because he's been arrested for raping somebody. And, you know, that in itself was quite shocking, you know.
That detail, all of that is really, it sort of adds to it. And then when you see Dee Devlin with him today, supporting him and going on, they've 4 children together and they seem to be blissfully happy, the two of them. And they certainly, you know, post a lot of kind of intimacies of their relationship and their life together on social media. It's the sort of life you could look into and feel envious of, the yacht in Monaco and Marbella, you know, the constant holidays and all the rest of it. But clearly we have had now a little window into the realities of that relationship, and it doesn't make for nice viewing.
No, uncomfortable viewing, I would say. And like even the nature of his partying lifestyle, it's just beyond anything I could imagine ever doing. You know, those kind of nights out where he's up all night in nightclubs, going after party and after party. There's cocaine, there's alcohol, there's women.
Yeah.
And just as well, like the fact that he was at home on a Saturday, his girlfriend was heavily pregnant, and he decides he's nothing better to do, so he'll just go off on an all-nighter with girls, cocaine, booze.
And come home, you know, 24 hours later or whatever, with a girl in the car. I was actually thinking, I didn't want to ask you because we weren't allowed to go there, but he's getting dropped home to Kildare and he has the other girl in the car. Danielle in the car. Like, is she in the car when he gets out at his house, or is she? It's a detail. I just wondered.
He dropped her home first. So she lives in Nice. And he lived at the K Club. Okay. I'm not very familiar with the geography of Kildare, but I would assume... It's just a small thing.
I just wondered, you know, would you get out of the car and your driver would go on, and would you be able to say, just dropping some girl home, like, whatever. But, you know, look, it has been a really uncomfortable view into their world, into their life, and into that celebrity. He went off looking very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Getting into that car. She looks very stressed out. The family are together, as he says, tonight. They're obviously going to gather and consider and he's going to focus on his future, he says, albeit he's appealing today's decision. The financial end of it, we're going to have to take some instruction on ourselves, but there will be fees to be paid, and there is really high costs for senior counsels, for barristers, for solicitors. The run-up to these cases are really long. I mean, this incident happened in 2018. Nikita Hand solicitors, no doubt, are working with her for a long period of time. She was very grateful and thankful to them all the way along. But they've been years, I presume, working on this civil case. They hired 3 seniors, did they? Or 1 senior, 2 juniors?
For Conor McGregor's?
For Nikita Hand?
2 seniors.
2 seniors. So they're all going to be, I mean, just a rough estimate of what they'd cost. It would be, a senior counsel could cost, you know, how many days are in court? It could cost about 900,000 plus VAT, and the junior about 600,000. That's not way out there in what they could cost. And then there's the solicitor's fees and all the work that went into that. So there's a lot of costs, okay? And I know that often in criminal cases, the state will pick up the cost, obviously, when there's free legal aid and stuff, but there isn't free legal aid with civil cases. You pay for your solicitors. But Nikita Hand is in an interesting situation in that she's essentially won her case against Conor McGregor. An amount has been awarded to her, but she's lost her case against James Lawrence, essentially.
Yeah. So
who pays whose costs and what happens there? Again, as I said to you, we'll come back to that next week. We'll take a little bit we'll go and investigate what happens with that. Does that come back before the courts and the costs? Or
yeah, I believe there's going to be a hearing next week.
Okay.
I think Tuesday or Wednesday.
On the costs?
In relation to the costs.
Okay.
Who's going to pay those?
Okay, well that will be well worth having a look at that. You thought you were finished?
I thought I was finished.
Yeah.
My cushion may stay in my bag.
Yeah. Because that really will be interesting. I mean, you know, as we said, Conor McGregor has no financial worries.
No.
But everybody else there probably does.
Yeah.
Or they're ordinary people. They're not the richest people in the world like he is. The Nikita Hand going forward has lost all anonymity, hasn't she?
Completely. I mean, it's been so tough for her to sit in that courtroom every day, and her on the stand, I felt like she did in herself get a bit stronger every day in how she was presenting herself, but she had to recount this detail. And usually, as you know, in criminal cases, there's anonymity. These cases for rape cases, like the detail that was given, they are normally held in camera, which means the public can't go in, and also the victim can't be named. But she had to not only recount this and have every detail reported in the media, but also there was onlookers there, a sea of young men looking down at her.
Were they there today, by the way?
There was a lot of public interest today. Yeah, there was a couple of faces from the public who I'd seen before and briefly spoke to before that I seen around today. There was a huge amount of people outside the court.
Yeah.
A lot of media, more media than I've ever seen in my life. From various different news outlets. But again, people from the public. There was a woman there as well with a sign up saying, "Nikita Hand, we stand by you, we believe in you," as well. So she had supporters there too.
So what do you think is going to be the future for Conor McGregor? I mean,
this is a man who previously said he wanted to run for the president of Ireland.
that's right.
So, I don't know.
What's the stigma for him? I mean, he more than likely won't be able to fight again, you would think, possibly. I mean, he has an ability to appeal, and that puts everything back on ice as such. But, his reputation...
But I mean, like you said, what reputation did he have going into it?
Well, he didn't have the reputation of that.
That, exactly.
And now he does. And
but I mean, as well, I don't know.
That was his secret life, wasn't it?
It was. And I don't know if people like to say things like false rape allegations, they ruin men's lives. But do they really? We've seen so many celebrities bounce back from things like this all the time. Forgiveness and acceptance, and I've moved on, and I'm very sorry, and I'm not like that anymore.
And the fan base didn't seem to have a problem with any of it during I don't know, were you looking at any of the stuff online? I mean, there was one particular guy who would be involved in boxing and would have been close to the Kinahan crew for a long time, which is why I was just happened to have a look at him. And he was narrating something the other night for all his followers on TikTok or one of these things. All the details were incredibly wrong. The details were just I was just looking at it going, the difference. I mean, here we are as what they like to call mainstream media, and we have lawyers listening while we're speaking, so as we don't make any mistakes, as we don't screw up a court case or do anything wrong. We're on tenterhooks, the two of us, for the last couple of weeks, and the amount of editing that went on as well. Even if we strayed into making a comment on something, we'd sort of have to go, cut that, and this guy was out there, and he had this completely false narrative about everything that was going on in the case, whether he hadn't actually looked at it or he just didn't care. And there's loads of that sort of stuff all over social media, pro Conor McGregor stuff, so there's going to be a lot of that. But I suppose how can he be hurt? He has the support of his partner, his parents, his sisters, his that sort of tight inner circle, and obviously this Sutcliffe guy, a friend. He has the support of an army of young men who follow him, and obviously this isn't going to turn them off. And the fine, or what we call it, the compensation, is pocket change to him.
Yeah.
So, and also his earning ability, he's not relying on a brand that's going to turn around and say, we can't be associated with Conor McGregor anymore. The UFC, those fighters might not have somebody who has been around this, domestic violence / sexual assault allegations that have been accepted by a jury. They might not want somebody like that associated with them, but he never has to fight again anyway. He's loaded.
Yeah. He's got his pub, he's got his
The whiskey, the proper 12, didn't he
whiskey,
sell that?
the
But he still has a
stout,
percentage
a
of
whole
it.
lot.
So he has money in the bank from selling those, but he still kept a percentage share of them. So he gets an income from that. You know, will he hurt himself going forward with you know, he seems to be somebody with a big ego. He didn't present very well in the witness box. He didn't come across as somebody who's able to take criticism.
No.
And will this be something that will...
I mean, we can only see. It's going to be an interesting, I think, time to watch him and see how, whether he self-implodes or whether he comes out swinging more than ever.
Yeah.
And sort of deny with this.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
just believes that he is right.
Yeah, so one to watch. But we'll come back next week having made some inquiries in relation to we have the course coming up on the Tuesday, but other stuff and the appeal, how that would go, etc. And we'll take some, we'll speak to some people in the sporting world who may know other stuff about him, and we'll regather.
Yeah,
because it's been a long couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, if anyone wants to send in some questions.
Exactly.
What's the email address, Nicola?
So, oh God, Clodagh, the email address is crimeworld@sundayworld.com.
Yes. So we'll take some questions and see if we can answer them.
Are you sure?
I'm 100% sure.
Yeah.
crimeworld@sundayworld.com.
Why don't we do a Q&A on this alone? Because the interest has been so great in this, and it's really why you went and sat all day every day and came back to the office late in the evening and went through your notes, and we worked late on this because the interest was so huge. We could see it. So let's do a separate Q&A.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and that's definitely the right email address. Yeah,
right.
and we've all our social media as well. So send in your questions, particularly for Clodagh, who was there throughout the trial, and we will study them and we'll come on and we'll do a separate episode on that. So Clodagh Meaney, thank you very much. Go home and have a good weekend.
Thank you, Nicola.